Welcome to Mental Wealth, the podcast to invest in your mind. Here I will help you make sense of your mind and behaviours, giving you the tools to have your best life. There is so much to share, so let's get into this episode and explore another great topic. So welcome to episode 23. And in this episode, we've got some really interesting things to bring to you. And I am delighted to say that I'm sharing this space with Brooke, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. And she tells me she likes to specialize in inner child work. So we're really going to have a great conversation. So Brooke, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Alison. Thank you for having me. So my name's Brooke Bownes and I'm an inner child coach, and I help people to understand that their inner child wounds can actually affect how they live as an adult life. And often when we talk about inner child wounds, people say, well, I didn't have a traumatic childhood, so that's not me. But you don't necessarily have to have a traumatic childhood to develop those inner child wounds. So me personally, I had a very traumatic childhood. I had a narcissistic mother, and I grew up hearing that I wasn't worthy, I was ugly, nobody would ever love me, I'll never amount to anything. And, I was physically and verbally abused most of my childhood. And so obviously I had major inner child wounds of not feeling good enough, not feeling worthy, lovable or important. But, I ended up getting coaching and therapy and realized actually that they were my mother's beliefs and not mine. So I could change my beliefs. And that's a great thing. And I help my clients with is that the beliefs that you've got now, you don't have to keep. You can actually change your beliefs and move on and live the life that you really want to live. And my mission is to help 1 million people to live the life that they want to live rather than the life they feel that they should live because of, inherited beliefs and thought patterns that they've had most of their life.
Brilliant. And I think it's so excuse me, I think it's so important, isn't it, for us to just pause sometimes and think about why things might not be going the way that we want them to. So a lot of people talk to me about feeling happier, feeling more confident, feeling more at ease with themselves. And sometimes we have to do some quite deep work, don't we, to get those results. And, yes, myself included, similar, Brooke, I've done a lot of work, a lot of therapy to get to where I am today. And that doesn't necessarily mean that's what everyone has to do. But I think we have to know, don't we, where some of our stuff comes from, why we don't have. Because I see people exhausting themselves trying to be more of something. But actually we don't we have to pause and think about what might be getting in our way. And I think in this episode, we're going to have a really great conversation about what that might be, and then hopefully some strategies to help us move forward.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, I totally agree with you there.
Brilliant. So it is a light touch because we've got a short space for us to share probably a lot of experience between Brooke and I in this area, because it is an area that I'm interested in too. And I'm very, very passionate about people understanding themselves so that they can be their best version of themselves, whatever that might look like. But I think something else that I'm always interested in, I'm interested in your thoughts on this, Brooke, is how we use what's happened to us to become that person that is you now, but having had that experience. Because there's no point in living in a space of blame or regret or horribleness because we've had maybe a tough time. And we can talk as well to the people who haven't had that, and I'm interested in your thoughts on when they haven't had that. But I think if we just put a little bit of thought on how we become the new person, even though we're still the same person but with this experience, what's your thoughts on that, Brooke?
Well, my thought is, and I say this to everybody I meet, that I believe that we're all diamonds, but we've just been buried under other people's thoughts and beliefs. And, that I help my clients to get back to being that original diamond so they can shine however they want to shine. For me, it's impacting the world and running this big mission, talking on stage, but that may not be for everybody. Some people just want to shine in their job, in their family, wherever it is that they want to shine. So that's what I help my clients do, to lift back those layers, to let them understand actually those beliefs and thoughts that they've got that aren't serving them right now. okay, let's look for where they've come from, kind of give them back to where they've come from, and what beliefs and thoughts do you want to have that will help you to move forward. And then we work on creating those new beliefs and those new thoughts, so you can actually become the person that you were originally supposed to be, that happy, aligned person, doing what you want to do and filling your cup full up, and feeling great about yourself and feeling really fulfilled in life.
I love that. I think it is important, isn't it, for us to take some time to think about the thoughts that we have, our inner self, our inner critic, that inner voice that we all can identify with, and work out whose it is, whose voice is it, who is that belief. And I think that's what you were saying earlier, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I work a lot with what's called parts work. So I believe we've got our true self as an adult, we have our inner child, and then we have these parts that come up. So when parts come up like self-sabotaging, procrastination, perfectionism, that's our inner child telling us they don't feel good enough, worthy, lovable, or important, or they don't feel safe. So procrastination will come in and stop us from doing what we want to do, so we stay small and stay safe. And procrastination is kind of like, tick, job done, I've done my job. So when we feel like we're procrastinating, we feel like we're being a perfectionist, or we feel like we're feeling anxious or overwhelmed, these are all parts and it's our body giving us feedback and letting us know that something isn't quite right there. So it's like checking in with your inner child. And obviously I go into this a lot deeper with my clients over a longer period of time, but it's essentially, it's instead of fearing those feelings coming up, where a lot of people say, oh yeah, well, I just got to push that to one side and go through it. But actually, no, it's like welcome them in, get curious as why they've turned up, and then process all that. Then you can move on and enjoy doing whatever it is you wanted to do. Now, my example I always use is when my coach first said to me, go do a Facebook Live on your personal profile. I went, oh my goodness. So the minute, your body goes, it sends a signal to your subconscious mind to say, this isn't safe, and it will find the danger, and those protective parts will come in to stop you doing it, because it's like, we're going to be in danger. Even though logically we know we can do that, we've got the skills and the knowledge, and we know we're perfectly safe to sit in front of a camera and talk and do a Facebook Live, our body is feeling something completely different, because it's kind of transported back to when we were 6 or 7 and something happened. And that for me, when I spoke out as a child, I got into trouble. So my body was going, no, if you speak out on that Facebook Live, you're going to get into trouble. Even though logically I knew I wouldn't, but my body was actually stopping me from doing it. My inner child was stopping me. So I procrastinated to the point of, and I'm sure your viewers can relate to this, that kitchen drawer that's always a bit of a mess with the odd pen top, elastic band and paper clip. I even tidied all that up. So that was immaculately tidy before I did my Facebook Live, because that suddenly seemed more important, because my procrastinating part was huge, because it's like, no, if I speak out, I'm in danger. So you can understand why my body didn't want me to speak out. So it's when we understand how our bodies work, and it's a bit like our bodies and our inner child controls the actions that we decide to take, even though logically we know that we can do them. If our bodies don't feel aligned with it or on board with it, we're not going to do that, or we're going to push through and absolutely feel horrendous and put a lot of strain on our system.
So important to say. I think something that really resonated for me, and I talk about this a lot, is when something just doesn't serve you anymore, but you can see how it used to. So it used to have a really good purpose. So yours was to not speak up because you would have got told off. A lot of people can identify with staying small, being invisible. It's easier because if you were brought up by parents maybe who were quite strict, and it's just easier to stay small, isn't it? It's easier to stay in the background. And just knowing that you could see why it was helpful, but then know that it's not serving you now. But I like to be able to see that it was helpful, because I think so many people get so upset with themselves saying, I know it's bad, it's rubbish, I shouldn't be like this, but actually it used to serve you. So it was a good thing. And now you're an adult or you're a young person, you're older, and you don't need this old thing anymore. And I think it's so important to just be able to pause, isn't it, and think about, it used to have a really good job, this thing. So thank you very much, but I don't need it now. And I think that's the bit, isn't it, that we need to pay attention to, is that it did have a purpose. Don't beat yourself up if you're thinking these things. they were there for a reason, but that reason has changed now. And part of your development is to let go of that idea so that you can become the adult that you want to be.
Absolutely. Like by me keeping quiet as a child kept me safe because I got less tellings off and I got less physical abuse. But obviously now, because I've got a business, I want to be vocal. I want to share what I'm doing, and I want to help lots of people. So I need to be seen. I need to be heard. So yes, it was great when I was a child because it kept me safe then. But actually, it's not doing that now because I don't need to be kept safe because, you know, my mother's not going to come in here and tell me off or beat me up for speaking out and saying what I need to say, you know. So it is that real understanding that, but what happens is our minds logically know that we can do these things, but our body, because it goes into that fight or flight or freeze situation, automatically reverts back to being that helpless 6-7-year-old and think, okay, well, I need to do what I did back then because it worked back then, because we haven't kind of date stamped it in the past. And that's what I help my clients to do is get their bodies to realize, okay, that happened when I was 6. I'm now 30, 40, 50 years old, or wherever how old I am. I don't need that coping strategy anymore. I can have a different one, and that's where I talk about you can change your belief system. You don't need to believe that anymore. That served you then, but it doesn't serve you now. So what belief system will serve you now, will help you to move forward in your life.
Yeah, so you're almost rewriting the stories and the scripts, aren't you, having paid respect to the fact that it was there and it worked for a lot of time. And I think most people can relate to that when they hear that. And that's where I think it's really important that we are highlighting that today, because, yeah, otherwise the opposite to that is that people are very hard on themselves, very negative about themselves, because they think, well, I'm pretty rubbish and I'm not going to speak up and I'm not going to put my head up. So I think that's really important. And then let's have a think about, well, what sort of strategies do you, I know that there's lots and I know that it's over time, but let's have a think about some small tangible things that we could get people to start to think about to help them move forward if they're becoming aware of this in themselves. What kind of things do you tend to work with for people?
It's being aware of your nervous system, because like I said, the minute you go, even if it's a slight thing, it will send a signal to your subconscious mind and it will spiral you into like not taking that action. So it's like, okay, noticing how your nervous system is reacting. Are you kind of holding your shoulders up? Are you clenching your jaw? So like, drop those shoulders, drop the jaw. If your heart's pounding, do some nice deep breathing. And I often like to use what I call the 5-2-8 technique, where you breathe in through your nose for a count of 5, hold for a count of 2, and then breathe out, counting backwards from 8 to 0, and repeat that a few times, because then that will reduce your heart rate to a normal heart rate. And then that sends a signal to your subconscious mind, oh, you must be safe because your heart's not pounding. You're not being chased by mad axemen, or you're not getting ready to physically fight. So it's thinking about how you're feeling about the situation before you're going into it. And if you start to feel yourself getting really, really worked up and tense, actually, how can I relax my body again? Because when your body's relaxed, then your subconscious mind is more likely to be on board with it, and you'll be able to go forward and do the action that you want to take in the first place.
I think that's so important, isn't it? Because so often I hear people are so worried about how are they going to deal with their past? How are they going to grow from whatever it is that's happened? And actually, just reminding ourselves that actually how we start is now. In the moment. It isn't 30 years ago.
No,
it's now. And isn't that's what I think, I'm often talking about, is that, the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between the past, present, or the future. It just, everything is a now, and then another now and another now. And I think, remembering that is so important. And I've had a few people on this podcast who've, explored that topic in itself. I had Joel on a few weeks ago, and he's a breath work expert, and he was talking about just literally breathing, how that changes your whole physiology and everything. It's so important. But I think, if anybody can take that right now, just listening to you, Brooke, and thinking about child work and dealing with the past, and just to know that your starting point is actually in this minute of how you're breathing and how you're feeling about you and your own thoughts.
And it's getting curious. Okay, why am I feeling like that? What what perceived danger am I thinking I'm going to be in? And when you become aware of that, you can then logically think, okay, well, I'm not in that danger now. So what steps can I then take? And you can, logically work your way through it. But if you kind of like get your body triggered, your nervous system triggered, you then go into that fight or flight. And when we go into that fight or flight situation, that freeze, we can't logically think, because all the energy is going to our major organs to get us ready to physically fight or physically run, which, is a survival mechanism. Because if there's a mad axeman chasing after you, you're either going to want to fight him or you're going to want to run away. You're not going to want to sit there and think, oh, I wonder if I can kind of have a conversation with him and calm him down. And because we need to take that action. But once we've actually got a calm nervous system, we can think about responding to things rather than reacting to things. Because when we're in that fight, flight or freeze, we're reacting. But actually, when we're in our logical part of our brain, we're then responding, and then we can figure things out and think, okay, right, actually, I am totally safe to sit here and do this Facebook Live. Nothing's going to happen. I'm not going to have a mad axeman come through the door or anything like that is going to happen. And you can then, calm your nervous system down, so you can then actually do your first Facebook Live. Yeah. And if it's something you're doing for the first time, you are naturally going to have a bit of nerves, because we're human beings, and that's okay, because it'd be a bit worrying if you felt nothing, because that means you're either dead or you're a psychopath. So it's like, you want to have that kind of, oh, okay, this is the first time I've done it, I'm not going to sure how it's going to go. So it's really, our bodies are always giving us feedback, they're always giving us data, but we tend to tune out to our bodies. Children are brilliant at listening to their bodies, because when they're tired, they fall asleep. When they're hungry, they cry. But, as we go along in life, we kind of suppress that and think, yeah, I'm hungry, but I'm just going to ignore that. Or I'm tired, but yeah, I'll just go on for another couple of hours. So we end up not really connecting with our bodies. But once we start reconnecting again with our bodies and listening to our bodies, we then can work with it, and our lives are so much more better, so much more productive as well.
Definitely. And I think it takes the pressure off as well, doesn't it? If rather than feel like we've got this mountain to climb, to maybe free ourselves of something that we don't like, the way we behave or the way we think or the way we feel about ourselves, just being able to train yourself to breathe in the moment and actually to just, like you say, manage that emotional response, which is normal. I'm always saying it's 5 times quicker. The limbic system gets involved 5 times quicker than any logic. Just being able to pause and think about that in itself is so important, isn't it? I think the other thing that I think is really important to say here is, when we are feeling unsettled about the past or anything for that matter, actually having the courage to, once you settle that really emotional response, to sit with things, to actually sit with that feeling, because we're so desperate to not have horrible feelings, aren't we, as humans, that we will do anything to get away from that feeling. And I don't know how you work with this, Brooke, but sometimes I do say to people, just literally sitting with that feeling and see what comes up. Just see what your mind might give you, because as you say, we are all that diamond, to use your metaphor, and we've all got that blueprint, and yet stuff happens to us, doesn't it? And I think just being able to sit sometimes with that difficultness, and I'm sure that's what you encourage your clients to do.
Absolutely, because we're not used to sitting with how we're feeling, and we need to feel to be able to heal. I'm always saying that to my clients. So, but especially if you've had a traumatic childhood or had parents that didn't know how to deal with their emotions, they're like, oh, don't cry. So we kind of suppress that emotion. But human beings, we're supposed to express our emotions, not suppress them. And when we suppress them, that's when we get, our bodies are not at ease, and we end up with diseases and stuff. So it is like allowing that feeling. If you're feeling sad, allowing that feeling to come up, let those tears come out. And if you're feeling angry, let that anger come up and come out. Because a lot of us have grown up, especially us women, good girls don't get angry. So it's like, oh my God, I'm not a good girl if I get angry. That's so wrong, And men are also told, men don't cry. Big boys don't cry, so they don't cry. But actually, it's all just emotions. There's no good or bad emotions. It's just the thoughts and the beliefs we attach to those particular emotions that make it feel like they're good or bad. So yeah, sitting with them and And people aren't used to doing that because, okay, well, I'll just shove that down and get on with my day. And the more you keep shoving them down, eventually they build up and they have to come out somewhere. And they'll come out as a disease. They'll come out as pain in the body. You know, I work with a lot of people and they'll say, oh yeah, I've got chronic pain across my shoulders and my neck and headaches. But as they're working with me and releasing all those emotions, they notice the pains from their shoulders and their neck goes, and they have less and less headaches and things because they're not stuffing all their emotions down.
Definitely. I think it's so important as well to hear us, you know, this conversation. Hopefully it will help people be able to kind of think about where their attention is. So is their attention on their pain, and that, i.e., they've got pain? Is their attention on they're so emotional, feeling very, very emotional? Just wherever their emotions or wherever their attention is a good place to start to sort of get you moving along this journey, which never ends, does it? It's just a constant.
Yeah, I can remember once a client came to a session. I said, oh, how are you? Oh, I've got this horrendous, really bad headache. She said, but I didn't want to like let you down, because she was a big people pleaser. She didn't just start working with me. So I just turned up. I'm like, okay. I said, well, we're not worried about doing a session today. We'll just have a chat. How's your week been? And she just then like released everything that she needed to release. And after she'd finished talking, she carried on for about 45 minutes without hardly a breath. I'm like, okay. I said, how's your headache now? She went, oh, it's gone. Because she'd got everything sort of piled up and she was trying to remember everything in her mind, and there was so much on her mind. She'd given herself a headache because she'd got so much stuff in her mind, and she hadn't released it or let it out anywhere. And I knew that when she'd let it out to me, that her headache would disappear. Yeah. And she went, oh my goodness, thank you. She said, I've had this headache for days. She said, and 45 minutes with you and it's disappeared. But it wasn't anything I did. I just created that space for her to allow her to release all that stuff that she needed to release.
And there's so much noise in our heads, and there's so much noise out there as well, isn't there? That sometimes just having, like you say, a space to either share it with somebody else, share it on paper, allow yourself to have a good cry, all these things just give us freedom, really, don't they? Ultimately, in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. Because once we understand why our body's doing what it's doing, we can then think, okay, I'm aware of that now, and get curious. Curiosity is a big thing I get with my clients. Get curious, you know, people say, oh, you know, I'm really upset because so-and-so was really angry and said X, Y, and Z. Okay, well, get curious as to why that person's angry. What's going on in their life for them to have to explode and be angry? It's not necessarily what you've done, but it's how they're feeling about themselves. And when my clients learn to be curious, they realize it's not all about them, and they don't take it internally. They think, oh, okay, what's going on with that person's life? So it's really getting curious, and with ourselves as well. Okay, I'm feeling a bit anxious and I'm feeling a bit worried. Why am I? Where's that come from? Where's that anxiety come from? Rather than thinking, oh, I can't be anxious, I need to like be really calm, I need to look confident, I need to look like I know what I'm doing. But no, get really curious as to where that anxiety is coming from, where that overwhelm is coming from. And then when you can start to like dissect it and chunk it down, okay, right, that makes sense. Okay, right, I can do this to deal with that. I can do that to deal with that. And suddenly, I mean, I had a client yesterday who's got to do a big presentation. She said, I'm just thinking of different ways I can kind of really get out of it. So we kind of like had a session all about her presentation. And she said afterwards, actually, I'm really looking forward to doing this presentation now, because we dealt with all the things that she was thinking, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if? And she was sending herself into a real anxiety panic because, oh my God, this could all go terribly, terribly wrong, you know. So we worked our way through it, and she's absolutely fine about doing her presentation now.
Brilliant. And isn't that just the best, when somebody can work through all of those objections and all of those doubts and actually realize, once you've cleared the sort of noise, suddenly they're looking forward to something. And how often do you hear then people say, wow, it was amazing, and it wasn't nothing like I'd imagined it was going to be. So good. So that's fabulous for her. Brilliant. Okay, so have you got so we've explored kind of some of the, I suppose, just talked about the reality. I think that's the thing that I'm sort of thinking about now. We're talking about the reality of what goes on in humans, and this podcast is always giving that sort of how to make sense of your mind, really, and your behaviors. So we've got some things to think about for people: pausing, sitting with discomfort sometimes, managing that emotional response, which is absolutely critical for anything. Doesn't matter whether it's inner child work or just life in general. What have you got another little tip that you like to use with your clients that you can share with everyone today?
Yeah, I've got a great little tip, and I'll have to describe it because obviously we're on a podcast. If you're feeling really, really anxious, because that's in where the trauma is and where all that kind of your limbic system is in the amygdala at the back of your head. We really want to be in like the front of our prefrontal cortex. So if you fold your arms and actually do like a butterfly tapping, so tap alternatively on each arm, keep your hands out straight, and just imagine a place where you love to be that's really, really peaceful. And that way it'll bring your thoughts back to the front of your mind, so you can think logically about stuff. So then you can work out what you want to do and where you want to go, because you can't tap like that and think of a lovely peaceful place and feel anxious at the same time. Your brain can't physically do that. So it's a really, really good way if you're thinking, oh, I've got to do this presentation, I'm feeling really anxious, so you can go into the toilets or somewhere beforehand, cross your arms over and tap on each, or if not, if you're feeling really anxious and you're in a room, tap on the side of your legs, either side of your thigh, just alternate tapping, and just think of a nice peaceful place that you love to be. Now mine, I always go to the New Forest. I love being in the New Forest amongst the trees. So I just go there, and it's like it will bring you back to sort of being what we call being online, being back in the logical part of your brain. So you can actually think, okay, yeah, I'm feeling anxious about this because when I was like 7 and I did a school play, that happened, and it made me feel like I was, what X, Y, and Z. So okay, right, that was when I was 7. I'm now 40 odd or 50 odd or whatever your age are. That's not going to happen to me today. So you can really think about that logically. So it's a really good way to kind of get your mind back into the place it needs to be, rather than working from your fight, flight, or freeze. You're actually working from the logical part of your brain.
Nice, lovely. And that, like you say, is something very tangible that you don't have to take any equipment with you. You've got your hands, you've got your arms, you can just very gently just do that. And I think it's a brilliant exercise to just bring you back into the moment.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your thoughts and some of your work with us today. I really appreciate it.
No problem. And if anybody's interested, I do actually do a complimentary half-an-hour call, and I'll pop the links over to you so you can pop them in the thread. And I've also got a book that is called You Can Have It, How to Break Through the Self-Sabotage Cycle, which is available on Amazon. And I'll pop those links to you as well, so you can pop them in the thread if anybody's interested in sort of like getting curious and it's kind of spiked something in them and think, oh yeah, I'd like to talk a bit further with that. I'd love to chat to anybody. If anybody emails me, I do reply to everybody personally as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Brooke. Yeah, we'll put all your links in the show notes for anyone. So brilliant episode. Great to just pause and think about a slightly different aspect of the mind and how we can get the best from ourselves. Interestingly, in next week's episode, I'm speaking to Nova Cobban, and we're going to be talking about rebirthing. So I think that'll all fall in just perfectly. So thanks again, Brooke.